Everything you need to know and more about heating and cooling, electrical, garage doors, and plumbing is right here, right now, on the Absolute Home Service Podcast.
Hello again. We are thrilled that you're joining us for another episode of the Absolute Home Service Podcast. I'm Vince Hauser. I'm one of the co-hosts of the show. I'm here with James McCarter, who is my co-host, and today we'll be interviewing Andy Wehner. He works for an unnamed local manufacturer, or they're not actually a national manufacturer, local representative, but his senior management didn't feel like he needed to officially represent them, so it's going to be in an unofficial capacity today. So anyway, I'll let James introduce himself, and we will move on with the show.
Yeah, good morning. Ready for the second episode here. Today we're going to be going over the heating and cooling issues with Andy here, and kind of see what he's got for us and what kind of information that we can bring to homeowners here.
All right, Andy, we appreciate you being here today, and if you want to give our listeners a brief background of your history so they know where these answers are coming from.
Yeah, so actually over the last 10 years I've worked for three of the largest manufacturers in the HVAC industry. Kind of started off as a territory manager, worked my way up from there to a couple different levels of management, more on the business consulting side than the technical, but over the years I've learned quite a bit on the technical and the easy to do things that homeowners can do, so love to help out.
All right, well thank you. James, you want to get started with the first questions?
Yeah, I mean, as we were talking before, the biggest thing for us is, we're trying to bring as much information as we can to homeowners. Try to educate them on what they can and cannot do, when they should, start looking for professional help, and just kind of going from there. And speaking for myself, with everything that I do in any given day, the last thing that I want to do is try and find any kind of spare time to go and attempt to mess with my HVAC system. So that being said, we want to deliver this information to them. So one of the first questions that I've got is how can I save money on my utility bills when it's pertaining to my HVAC system?
Yeah, so one thing I always suggest to people also is, get a professional involved over the very couple things that you can do at home, just because there's a lot of things you're going to get yourself into trouble with if you don't get a professional. Ways to save money, I mean, everything from starting with a thermostat, making sure you have a thermostat that you can be programmable, so that way you can program schedules in there, so that way when you're away, you don't want your house to be 68 degrees in the middle of summer because you're not there using it.
Right.
So you may want it to go up to like 72, and so you want to be able to set that temperature, and that way, one of those things, you don't have time to think about it, so it just does it for you. So that very first thing I would start with is a thermostat and kind of work back from there.
If my house was 68 degrees, my entire family would be wrapped up in sleeping bags and blankets, just FYI.
Right, I was actually going to say the same thing. Mine is set on 68, and now my wife, she hates me for it, but I would say, are you married?
Yes, I am.
Okay, so how I would, save on my utility bills is just put a lock over top of my thermostat.
Yeah.
My wife, I mean, if it was up to her, she would jack that thing up as high as she can get it, and we would all be sweating and miserable, but we would save in the long run by not having those fluctuating temperatures.
Yeah.
So I guess, and that was actually, one of the questions that I had that you hit on, as far as, calling a professional. When should we look to call a professional?
Really, for most people, a lot of the technical and the electrical is going to be out of their hands. So I'm always a big proponent of getting somebody that understands the whole system and getting them there and finding somebody that you could trust to work on it from the start.
Right.
I think, you can easily get yourself into trouble with electrical on a system, electrocute yourself or short circuit something and cause more damage. And I've seen it over the years. Somebody wants to change their own thermostat, they get it off Amazon or something, and then they rewire it and they blow up a computer board on their furnace or air handler.
Got it.
So.
Yeah, I mean, and we go to them with Absolute Services. We go to them frequently. We just had a couple calls yesterday where people put their own thermostat on and they didn't know that they did not have a heat pump, and there's a switch on the back of the particular one they had that was switched on furnace. And so, you know, they attempted to save money. We would have actually sold them the thermostat cheaper than what they bought it for, and they paid for our service to come out there and do it anyway. But,
Right.
you know, and potentially, depending on how complicated of a thermostat that they have, that's where in the communication portion, because some of the thermostats really communicate with the systems. The minor ones really don't. And the more communications involved, that's where you can start blowing things up. You know, I'll comment too on the when to call a professional. I mean, what we recommend at Absolute Services, we offer a we call it the Total Home Care Club, but it's basically a preventative maintenance plan. And you know, the majority of people don't do anything to their HVAC equipment. They don't know what brand it is. They don't know anything at all about it. And you know, the number one thing is changing the filters. Very few people do it. When we show up twice a year, we're going to change your filter. You know, that's primary number one. But they're going to look over all the other components of the system to make sure they're working properly. You know, and for what it costs to have us come out there, you know, it could save you a ton of money in the long run, with lengthening the useful years out of that system. You know, sometimes probably as much as double, just by taking proper care of it. So.
Yeah, you know, that's a big thing that people don't realize. So over the years, I learned a analogy to help homeowners kind of realize what the difference is. So if you take your car, 3,000 to 5,000 miles, you're getting your oil changed. People don't realize in a year, it's like putting 90,000 miles on your HVAC system. And so people who don't maintenance it, you know, if you put it in a little bit of perspective like that, they kind of understand, wow, if I'm putting 90,000 miles, I should have this thing serviced at least a couple times a year. And if you want it to last long, you're going to have it serviced.
Well, going on a maintenance note then, so you said it's like a car. What kind of maintenance does the system need? Like, what should we look for? You know, everything from like filters, like, you know, you mentioned something about burners earlier. I didn't even know that they had burners in them. So what kind of maintenance would a typical HVAC system require?
Yeah, so most of the time you're going to do two. One going into the summer season, that's going to cover your outdoor unit. So you're going to the person's going to come in. They're going to probably clean the coil. They're going to arm out the capacitor to make sure it's working properly, and they'll check all the outdoor unit components and make sure everything's looking good. So that way, when you go into summer and you start to use it, because in the summertime you're going to use it at its max capacity. So you want it to be, you know, like you're going on a trip with your car. You go, you get your tires done, you get all this done, so that way you know you're going to have a safe trip. And then going into the winter, you want to do your furnace or indoor unit air handler. If it's a furnace, you're going to have burners to clean. You're going to have an igniter to make sure it's clean. You want to have a motor and stuff that you want to make sure is working properly. So that way we can get into those cold, you know, -5-degree days, which, you know, happen occasionally. Your furnace is going to be
The times where you really start experiencing
Yeah.
problems. Yeah, and
Yeah.
I'm glad that you said that, because like on the garage door side of things, I say the same thing to people all the time too. You know, I reference it just like you just did. It's like a car. You know, you're going to get oil changes, tire rotations. You're going to, you know, service certain fluids and garage doors. And what sounds like it is, HVAC systems are a lot like the maintenance service required for garage doors as well. So they're going to require, you know, yearly maintenance.
Yeah, I mean, start looking at anything with, like, that's mechanical or that moves, you got to do some kind of maintenance to it. Things break over time if they're not properly taken care of.
Doesn't last forever.
It does not.
I wish it did.
Yeah.
You know, let me just a little bit of jumping in there. You know, when people are talking about burners, you know, so the people that, you know, of course, our number one area that we do heating and cooling work in is in Louisville right now. Do some in Elizabethtown as well. Soon we'll be going to Lexington with that service. But in the city of Louisville, there's a lot of gas. You know, so those houses, that's where your furnace is, and that's where you got burners. Once you get outside Gene Snyder very much, now you're going to be getting into all electric. So, you know, a lot of people are confused on what type of system they have, and they reference, you know, not the appropriate name for the equipment they have. So, but of course, our technicians are all, you know, they know the difference, and they're trained on all of them. So, you know, not every house, you're only going to have a furnace if you have gas.
Yeah.
Right.
Basically.
Well, on that note, I've heard a bunch of different types of components or acronyms in the heating and cooling industry, like HVAC, BTU, CAV, AHU. Can you help us understand those just a little bit better?
Yeah, so, man, before I started in this, in 2010, I didn't even know what HVAC stood for. So, and I didn't even know that there was an indoor and an outdoor. I remember having when I bought a condo, I had it serviced, and the guy's like, well, where's your outdoor unit? And I'm like, no, it's in the closet. And they're like,
Right.
no, you got an outdoor unit. So, but yeah, HVAC is heating, ventilation, air conditioning. So basically it just covers our industry with everything from, you know, because people always think about the HVAC industry as just your air conditioning and your indoor unit furnace or air handler. But actually we have, you know, ventilation, we have IAQ, which is indoor air quality products and stuff that make the filtration better and stuff. So there's a lot that goes into that HVAC industry. BTUs is what they talk about in furnaces and basically heating. So basically 12,000 BTUs is 1 ton, and then but for furnaces you're looking at like usually 40, 60, 80, 100,000 BTUs of heat. So your heating load, what else you got? Air, AHU, that's an air handler unit. So basically if you have an electric heat pump, you're going to have an air handler unit that basically moves the air, and then because your heat pump does the heating and the cooling, and then if you need backup heat, you have electric heat in that air handler.
It sounds like there's a lot of different components and parts of those.
Yeah, yeah,
Well,
and there's about a book this thick of acronyms like that you can go through in this industry. And
So
And
what's the
One,
go ahead.
one other huge one that wasn't mentioned is SEER. You
Yes.
know, and that
I've heard
SEER is thrown around our industry every single day, and hardly anyone outside the industry really even knows what it means. So you can elaborate on that a little bit if you don't mind.
Yeah, definitely. It's a seasonal energy efficiency
Rating.
Yeah, I have to think about it myself. And then there's
Right.
EER, which is energy efficiency rating. So basically the SEER is you use the minimum right now is 14 in our area. If you go across the river, you can still do 13 in AC. But basically it's an energy efficiency of that system. So the higher SEER you go, the better efficiency you're going to get. But you start to lose, I guess people get confused a lot because once you get above 18 SEER, so you got 18s, 20s, 21s, 22s, the energy savings you're going to have on your electric bill is going to be very minuscule because they're getting so efficient. It's like you get an electric car, and then now you got batteries that either go 200 miles or 250 or 300. They're all efficient. Just one can go a little bit longer and stuff like that than the other one. And so looking at efficiency rating, Energy Star is the big pusher of SEER. I think it's 14.5 right now.
Right.
And then it goes up from there. And they continue to push it and stuff. So homeowners, I wouldn't get confused with that as much. Start looking at, you know, things like 2-stage equipment, inverter technology and stuff like that, because it's much more than the SEER is the ability for that system to be able to take care of your needs in your home.
Right. Comfort.
Comfort.
Yeah. So yeah, well, I mean, most of what I, you know, read or how I try to explain it is it's really almost like a random number. The amount of stuff that goes into figuring it, it's way beyond what most people care to read about, and really you just need to know that this is the minimum standard.
Yeah.
So, you know, like when on the 14 SEER, which is your base model, we use. I mean, that's what if you buy a brand new house, 99% of them are going to have 14 SEER equipment. So we commonly refer to that's the builder version, that's the economy version. If you want in for the cheapest possible price, you're going in with 14 SEER equipment. You know, but You know, I just in a meeting a few days ago, the 14 SEER supposedly within the next 2 years is going to be phased and it's going to become 16 SEER. So, you know, it's on, the 14's on the way out. The 16 is more what we typically will sell the most of, unless it's people that are really, you know, budget constrained, we'll say, nicely. So, but from an overall package, I mean, my personal belief, the 16 SEER and the 18 SEER versions are really where most people will want to be, because the next thing that he talks about, and we get a lot of comments back from customers that we install it for, is the 2-stage and variable speed equipment, and to me that's just as important as the SEER rating.
Oh yeah. Probably more, honestly.
Right.
Yeah.
So what is the 2-stage? What type of equipment? What is that?
Yeah, so all manufacturers basically have their versions of basically a 2-stage, and then some may even have a 5-stage or an inverter technology.
Well, let's start with the 14 SEER that we're talking about, the builder version. It comes as 1-stage or single stage is what they refer to it. That means, we'll go back to your car reference, when you turn that on, it's like putting your foot to the floor on your accelerator. It's running wide open until it's not, and then it stops. So when it gets down to, what did you say you keep your house at?
68.
68.
Oh,
So, yeah, when it gets down to 67, boom, it's on full blast until it gets back up to,
It's almost like a clutch, or like a manual transmission,
Yes.
right? You can select different gears.
yes.
Got it.
So, now go ahead, I saw you.
Yeah,
were
no, that's
saying-
perfect. No, that's perfect. Actually, because so think of it as this is single stage. It comes on like he said. So basically, if you're in a car, stoplight to stoplight, you hit the gas as hard as you can. You got to stop again.
That's the way James rolls.
Yeah.
That's the most efficient way to get anywhere.
And your gas tank goes down real quick. So same thing, you know, the big thing is in Kentucky is we have this wonderful climate here that everybody loves. You know, it changes from 5 minutes out the door to the next 5 minutes. So if you have single stage, your house is built for, say it's a 4-ton. Your house at the very maximum is like 95 degrees is basically what they do the cooling for. So at 95 degrees, you get all 4 tons. Well, in Kentucky, you have a lot of days that are in that 78 to 87, 88 range, but your humidity's high. So it can feel like 95. Well, you're still getting 4 tons of air at all times with that single stage. You bring a 2-stage in, what that does is it allows, so usually there's a 50 or 60, 40 or 70-30 split depending on the manufacturer. So on those days that you only need like 85 degrees, so you may only need that first stage that comes on at, say, if you got a 4-ton, say it's a 60%, so you're getting about 2.5 tons of air. So now you're satisfying it without going into that second stage. You get a longer run time. So you get a big house that has those long runs. There's always a room in the back that's either hot or cold. It's opposite of the temperature. Well, it's because your system's not running long enough. So if you get a 2-stage or an inverter, that system runs longer and it allows more air to get back there.
So with the single stage, it's full blast.
Full
That thermostat it kicks off back rooms cold.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, so your 2-stage is going to be half throttle,
Yeah.
basically. So it's going to run for a longer period of time, but it's running at a much slower speed and it's consuming far less energy.
Sounds like it's more
Doing that.
efficient with getting the rooms more moderated.
Yeah, because it pulls out more humidity.
Yeah, the
Okay.
humidity is the key.
Yeah, that's the key. Because you can set your thermostat on 75. If you have like a 40% relative humidity, it feels like it's 70 degrees in there.
Yeah, we back in the late summer, we put in put in 2 systems in a good friend of mine's house. And so, of course, it really wasn't a big sell. You know, he asked me what I recommended. I told him, hey, you need to put, you know, if it were my house, I would put the 16 SEER 2-stage equipment. So we did that in the house, and there really was no pitch on me to explain the benefits. He just took my word. So he came back to me, you know, his system was like 15 years old. He come back, you know, after it was in there for a few weeks, and he was like, man, this system is, you know, these systems that are awesome. He said, and you didn't even tell me what I was going to get for it. And I'm like, well, you just said, what do I need? And I told you what you need. And so he came back. First thing is that they changed their thermostat 2 degrees. and I guess higher in the summer, because it was running. He was like, man, we turned our, I don't remember what exact, 71 I believe it was, is what he told me they used to keep. And he said at 71 we were freezing to death in the house, so we had to move it to 73. And but that was from that humidity deal. I mean, they run for a lot longer time. He's like, and then the next thing is my electric bill went down over $50 a month by putting in these two systems. And then the third one, which I really didn't even think about, until he mentioned it, he said we quit using our deck outside when we had that old system. And I was like, what does your air conditioner have to do with the usage of your deck? And he's like, well, both units sit right next to it, and they were so loud. He said we just quit using it.
Right.
And he said, and then now with this two-stage equipment, you hardly even hear and the technology's improved. So there's a combination of both things, but that equipment is running at such a low volume. He said you don't even hardly know it's on. So we actually got the use of our deck back. So he was overjoyed.
It's a win-win-win.
Yeah.
So
awesome.
in Kentucky, is the two-stage 16 SEER, is that what's recommended, like in our area, like southern Indiana and northern Kentucky?
I wouldn't go lower than two-stage.
Right.
There are, better than the two-stage. There's an inverter, which is the best analogy I could say is it's like cruise control in your car. So once it comes on, you get up to speed, it stays on, and that's what messes people up the most, I think, with inverters, is they're like, oh my God, this thing's running all day, it's going to run my energy. Well, almost all of your energy for an HVAC is pulled on startup of that compressor.
Mm-hmm.
So if that start, stop, that thing's just pulling energy. Where an inverter comes on, and it'll stay on pretty much almost the whole day. And what it does is it stays within about a half a degree temperature, and it just like a cruise control. It just floats.
If you need more, it gives you more. If you need less, it takes less.
Yeah.
Well, and on that note, we're not going to get into IAQ or indoor air quality today because we're going to cover that next week in a different show. But I have IAQ products in our house, and we actually leave our fan on all the time. And you literally have to put your hand over the register to even know it's on. But how the IAQ works, you have to have air moving through the system for it to clean it. So the more it moves, the cleaner it gets. And it's phenomenal, by the way, but we'll get into that.
And just to jump to that one for you guys, if you're living in Kentucky and you're not using IAQ, you're really missing the boat, because worst places in America for allergies and all that, IAQ is very important, especially in Louisville and Ohio.
I don't know what it does or how it works, but I had Vince and Absolute Services put it in my house, and from somebody that has bad allergies, it's easier for me to tell you what I am not allergic to.
Yeah.
The difference is it was crazy.
Yeah.
Absolutely crazy. All the dust and debris and the stuff that it removed, how it made it better is a whole lot better. But like Vince said, we'll talk about that next week. But more back on like the HVAC side. So a couple of issues that I was experiencing in my own personal home is I noticed that the unit, what do you call it, the air handler? Is that what you call it outside?
No, outside would be AC or heat pump.
That's AC or heat pump. Okay, that would freeze up. Why would that happen?
So a lot of that works on the short cycling of it. That thing coming on, going off, it's not getting a full run time on it, so that can cause a lot of freeze up. The coil being dirty, that's a major part of it too, is you don't get your coils clean. It doesn't have the ability to release the heat.
Low on refrigerant.
Yeah, low on refrigerant. Filters.
Yep.
Like Vince said, the first place you start is your filter. I've heard stories of people going in, system's not working, they look at the filter and it's probably got an inch of dirt on it. There's no air getting through.
That would be James.
Right. Well, and now that you mentioned that, so go through like some of the basic components. So like if a homeowner was to call in and they were trying to let you know what is exactly going on, how would you like someone to tell you what's going on? Like, you don't want me to say that thingy that's outside. Give us some of the basic components of the HVAC system.
Yeah, so the major part of the outdoor unit is the compressor. And a lot of times you'll have people call in, they'll be like, man, this thing's knocking like real loud and stuff like it. That'll be a big thing. They'll feel it, the wall will be vibrating. The coil is the other major part of the outdoor unit. So if that thing's clogged, that causes the ability for the outdoor unit to release the heat and everything out, so that causes issues. It's probably all most people are going to do with the outdoor, unless it tripped, like one of the breakers and stuff like that. They may call you, hey, it's not running. Then the indoor, most people forget that their indoor's there, because especially in Louisville, we have a lot of attics.
Mm-hmm.
So all of a sudden, most time you're going to get called, this thing's just not working. Well, you'll get a few people that goes up, and they may hear a whine, and that's usually in the motor or the blower wheel and stuff like that. So
There's very few items that any homeowner
yeah,
needs to be touching.
yeah,
I know enough to be extremely dangerous, and I ain't touching it.
yeah. I'm not touching. I know most of the things on mine, and I still call professionals.
So, well, and that's happened before to me personally. I've had this issue, and you mentioned that one of the components on the outside was the actual compressor itself. Mine had to get replaced. Now, with and I'll kind of give you this reference on garage doors. All the components on the garage door, they have a shelf life, right? And like you said, nothing's going to last forever. You need proper maintenance, stuff like that. When replacing the compressor. Is the whole unit due for replacement at that time?
So it really depends on. All manufacturers have a warranty. Compressor is usually the major part of the warranty on the outdoor. Depending on if it's under warranty, and you still have to pay for the labor to get it done, it may be a better option depending on some of your life stuff. So are you going to sell the house in a year? If you're going to sell the house in a year, and it's under warranty, just get the compressor replaced. It's going to save you. If you're planning to live there for 10 years, it's already 8 to 9 years old, you're replacing the compressor, probably maybe at least a good option to look at new units, because being that it's 18 years old, you have more technology out there, you have better efficiency, you have better financing now to help out, pay for it, to get it under your budget. So a few of those aspects I'd say go into choosing whether or not you want to go ahead and buy a new system with versus replacing the compressor.
And we'd be the one replacing it because we'd lived there forever, because we're now on our third forever home.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. So we're currently looking for our fourth forever home now.
There you go.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, people don't realize. I mean, about the average length, I think, is about 7.5 years somebody lives in the home. So I think it's like you may buy 1.25 systems in your whole lifetime, because people usually move before they have to change out a system.
And that's good that you did mention the different options as far as replacing it for financing, because with Absolute Services we offer financing.
The example that I gave you earlier of the friend that we put the system in, he saved $50 a month on his electric bill, and that basically pays half the payment that he had on his equipment. So, when his system was 17 years old that we replaced. So the majority of the cost of the new system was offset by energy efficiency, because there's huge gains that happen over a 17-year period in efficiencies. So, when equipment gets to that age, we typically tell people, you're paying for the equipment one way or the other. It's just whether or not you get it.
Yeah, basically.
So would you rather give it to LG&E, or would you rather, have the extra comfort in your house? So.
Well, and on that, so like you earlier you mentioned something about thermostats and something about being programmable. Is that like being programmed to my phone? Is that kind of what we're talking about, or can you elaborate a little bit more on different types of thermostats?
Yeah, so you can actually get both. You can get programmable ones that don't come to your phone. You can get programmable ones that you can control from your phone. Quite a few manufacturers make Honeywell, Nest, Ecobee, all of them make ones that you can actually control from your phone. And so I love mine. And so like I have one I can control from my phone, and when I'm away, like my wife, she got locked out of the app. She doesn't want to do reset passwords, so she just calls me. Hey, and she doesn't even want to walk upstairs to the thermostat. hey, can you just set the temperature of this? Okay. I
So
can do
how
it.
often do you turn it way high or way low just to mess with it?
I don't mess with it, man.
That would definitely be going on.
Yeah.
See, my garage is connected to my phone, and just randomly I'll just hit the button and let it open. And, let my wife freak out just a smidge until she starts to catch on. I think there's one part of this that we've not actually talked about is like ductwork, right? As far as like the HVAC system. So, what exactly is the ductwork, and how often should it be cleaned in the home?
Yeah, so the ductwork's what takes the air to the different areas of your rooms in your house, so that way they're comfortable heating, cooling, and everything like that. I would say, depending on how old your house is and everything like that, with duct cleaning at least once every 2 years,
Mm-hmm.
I would say to do it. Newer homes, you could probably wait a little bit longer because the houses, I just built a house, so probably would be a few years before I get my ducts cleaned.
A lot of it too depends on how much carpet you have, how many pets you have.
True.
Just your good or bad habits will help determine.
Well, and that was actually a follow-up question I actually had. Why would you clean the ducts? Like, what could get in them?
Smoke,
Anything that's in the air.
Yeah.
Is going to get into the ductwork, and the more animals that you have, the more pet hair, and all the other odors that come with pets,
Yeah.
and ultimately your system's sucking all that through it as well.
Yeah, and I'm sure when you get into the IAQ next week,
Mm-hmm.
you'll talk more about what can go through. I mean, some filters are, they only trap large particles, and as you get to better filters, they go smaller and smaller particles. So, y'all are talk about that. So
Yeah,
steal that thunder.
and on that note, there are systems that don't have any air ducts in them.
Yeah.
Now when you get overseas, it's most of those houses over there have the ductless, or in the industry they're typically called mini splits. But there really is just an air conditioning system that doesn't have any ductwork. And the reason that is, the number one reason, I have this discussion with mini split suppliers, because they still think that it's going to take over the United States. I totally disagree, because all these homes in Europe and all overseas, that why those houses were, cities were built hundreds and hundreds of years ago. So, and it's all old architecture, and it didn't have ducts designed to be in there originally. If you want air conditioning, you're either going to cut monster hole and put ductwork in. You're going to be cutting gigantic holes all over the house and be looking at nasty ductwork. Mini split is an absolutely perfect option for that, and I 100% agree with that. Where it's used in our market, you build a sunroom on the back of your house and you need air conditioning. You don't want to have to go buy a complete system and put in ductwork to heat up or cool a sunroom. If you got a man cave built in your garage, you don't need an entire system, the ducted system to put in there. You can put a small mini split. It's far more efficient than using a window air conditioner, and you don't have to look at it.
Right.
So-
Right. Now, Andy, I know that you can't talk about the system brand that you represent today, but how does a homeowner choose the best brand of system for their needs, or do they mostly just choose by name recognition?
So really, it comes out. You'll have so many people in the market that they have a brand. It's because more than likely they bought a house or they owned this system before and it's done them really well, and they want to stay with it, and that's great. You'll have people that do research. So there's a lot of research places out there that you can look, and they'll do unbiased tests and stuff and tell you which ones last longer, which ones do this. So research is definitely, I'd say, the best way.
I'll say there is no such thing as an unbiased test, by the way,
Yeah.
but you can proceed.
Yeah, it's usually who pays the money, right?
Right, yeah.
But I think the more important thing over the brand and stuff is, finding the right contractor. And because you can have the best rated system that all these reports say is the best one and it's put in properly, and it'll be the worst thing you ever had in your life, and you just pay 20 grand or whatever it is for that, and it's not working properly.
It all depends on really who installs it.
It
Who's
does.
behind that drill?
It does.
So, is there a difference between the brands?
Yeah, there's a complete difference between the brands. A lot of the same now as we've gotten to where supply or demand is so high. There's only so many suppliers out there, so a lot of the brands use a lot of the same parts and stuff like that. So the what used to be back in the 80s, a big difference between each brand is getting real narrow. Now it becomes what their niche is. Some may be, hey, we've got a 5-stage system. This person may have an inverter that does, diagnostics on it, or this person had, so each one could be like that. But
Yeah.
for the most part, if you're talking 14 SEER, you're probably not going to be much difference and stuff.
That's what I was gonna say. When
Yeah.
you on that builder grade stuff,
Yeah.
it's pretty much a sticker on the side that is the difference.
And then that really goes to who it's installed by then,
Correct.
especially.
Correct. Yeah, so when you get into the more higher efficiency, there are differences between it. Now some manufacturers rep might be offended when I say it, but I still really don't think there's a whole lot of difference between them myself. Because we install several different brands and we really have no issues out of any of them. Almost all issues are either self-inflicted by our installer and we immediately go back there and take care of them, or it's a homeowner that did not know how to run a thermostat usually. So we go back to jobs very, very frequently where, we had another one, I'll leave him unnamed because he's a very good friend of mine. We put a system in and he calls me one night to tell me that his air conditioning wasn't working, and he had flipped it to program mode and had never programmed it. And wanted us to come out there at very late at night and fix it. But anyway, so I may have said a few unkind things to him.
They always stop working when it's most inconvenient. But so you guys have mentioned like a lot of different things, a lot of different thermostats and things like that. One other issue that I've had personally in my house is I've noticed a lot of humidity and condensation issues in the home. When you start to experience something like that, what can you do, or what should I do, or what should I have done in that scenario?
Yeah, so one, definitely call a professional, because it can be everything starting from insulation. Your house it's letting in too much heat from the humidity from outdoors. Then it goes to what we were talking about earlier about 14 SEER versus being single stage versus multiple stage. Your system's not running long enough to pull out the humidity. You get these inverters, and most of them will pull out 23 to 24 gallons of water a day out of your house. They're pretty impressive. So you figure, because they're running all day, so they're constantly pulling out the humidity. So getting a professional in there to check that, one, to look at your system to see it hasn't been maintenance, is it a dirty coil out there, things like that. And then also looking at if I'm going to be continuously having this problem, I may need to look at a new system that's going to move me up to a better one that pulls out more humidity.
So a lot of it kind of sounds like it stems down to professional. You should
Yes.
have somebody
It
that
does.
knows what they're doing.
It does.
Because there's other options. You can actually add a dehumidifier to your existing system, but where that comes into play is if you already have that system that's only a few years old, it's really not worth upgrading it. So then you can add the dehumidifier to run on your probably 13 SEER equipment, because it was put in when 13 was the standard. And it's going to pull a lot more humidity out without having to spend $10,000 to complete or to change out the whole system. So there's multiple options, and that's where calling somebody that knows what they're doing.
So what I'm gathering is HVAC is not a DIY project.
No matter how many videos are out there on YouTube, if you don't have the technical aptitude to do it, just don't. Find somebody that you can trust. Read reviews, look online, talk to people that you know, but find a professional.
Now, outside of Absolute Services, if for our listeners that are not in this area, what is the best way to find that professional contractor? What should they look for in their HVAC contractor?
Yeah, so first, always do research. Talk to people that's been using people. That's the first place I go. People you know that have had somebody working for them for years, more than likely have probably had a good experience from this person, and so you can get the same from that person. If you don't have people that you can talk to like that, maybe you're new to a new city or anything like that, get online, read reviews. Better Business Bureau is a good place to look because it pulls up all the complaints or if they have any and then what they did. Because look, there are always going to be people out there complaining about something. It's how you respond to that complaint that takes care of it and stuff. And so by seeing a contractor that may have one or two complaints, but then they took the initiative and be like, hey, we're going to fix this for you. You know, that shows that they want to be the right contractor. So.
Yeah, and my opinion on it is that you want to go with a little bit, at least a company that's running 4 or 5 vehicles. If you're shopping strictly on price and you think that it is not important to have heat for several days in the wintertime or air conditioning for several days in the summer, call the one man in the truck, because that's what's going to happen when it breaks down. If he's any type of company or worker at all, he's going to be busy, and unless you're very close with him, you're not going to be on the top of the list. So you got to prepare for that. When you work with larger companies where they're going to have a little more flexibility to determine what's truly emergency, what's not, which is what we do, and then we'll rank those appropriately during those extreme times. Because I mean, in July, it's extreme. You can't staff enough people to cover it because in a few months it's going to be the opposite direction.
And that's when the term "happy wife, happy life"
Yes.
really comes into play.
Oh, yeah.
And like I said, in the wintertime, if she can set it to 80, she would. But in the summertime, if she's a little no, absolutely not.
But I agree with Andy 100% on especially looking at Google reviews. You want to see companies that have at least 50 plus reviews.
Yes.
If they don't have that many, they're not in the game. They don't care about reviews. They're not following reviews.
It brings that professionalism.
Right.
And, like I was talking to somebody yesterday, and I was talking to him. We're talking about insurance, and I go with my insurance person, and I have all my policies through them. Yeah, I pay more, and I could probably save a little bit, but I know they service me, and I can if I can call them, I can get anything done, and that's where you pay the money for.
Yeah, and that's the insurance is a big deal as well.
Yes.
I mean that you can burn the house down in the HVAC.
You can.
Yeah. You can put some nasty stuff in the air and kill people with HVAC. It's uncommon, but it does happen. That's why we carry several $1 million. Hope to God that never happens. But I'll assure you that the guy living down the street working out of his pickup truck ain't gonna have that.
Well, and I can tell you that's why Absolute Services and your phone number is programmed into my phone for HVAC. I do not even want to mess with it. Don't even want to attempt to do it. Garage doors all day. HVAC
Right.
and other systems, I don't think so. So I do have one question as far as replacing the system, and this is kind of like a two-step system. So let's say we're getting to the point of having to replace. How do I know when I need to replace the system? And second one, what is going to be the best way to determine what system I need for my house?
Yeah, so I guess if it's still working, you're not going to be like, all right, you're going to want to do it because, hey, I figured out, I talked to somebody and somebody told me, hey, they're saving money on their energy bills or something. If it's working, most of the time you don't think about it. That, like you said earlier, I want my time not to be thinking about my HVAC. That when it's working, you don't think about it. You're like, okay, it's always when it breaks. And, for years at another manufacturer I was at, we try to always push people to buy in the spring and the fall because it helps out in the summertime when, Vince was talking about that. Demand is incredibly high because it's a fix on fail in the summer. Mm-hmm. And so you try to push people to the shoulder months and stuff like that. But when it's working, people don't care.
Right.
So it's more than likely going to happen when something fails on it and then somebody comes in and explains, hey, your system's this old. We have new systems here that we can move you to, and it can stay in your budget if you use financing.
And that's where you probably would catch that during some sort of like maintenance inspection or something like that.
So a lot of times you're finding that maintenance drives. a lot of it, because when people are there maintaining your system, that's when they're gonna see, hey, you've got some issues going on here. We either need to fix it now, or this is how long you may have before you're gonna need to fix it. And so
Yeah.
you don't wanna get in summertime and break, and then you're through, 2 weeks out from being able to get, service, so.
And I have teenage kids, so, and that's how I would reference it to anyone, that you pretty much want to get rid of them, when they're teens, and it's basically the same thing in HVAC equipment. When you hit anything with the last part of it being teen, you are getting there. I mean, that's when you need to start budgeting for it. It may not happen today. If you kept it maintained the whole time and cleaned, and you're probably going to get much more than the 13. But if you did what most homeowners do, and that's maybe change the filter once a year, and it's probably because your outside unit froze, that is not good for it. And when that happens, then when you get hit that 12 and 13 year mark, you better be ready. It's coming. And like Andy said, when it's 98 degrees outside and it goes out, it is not nice.
Yeah.
And that's when we get the screaming phone call. I gotta have air. I gotta have air. And and what's really funny to me is amazing how many people have somebody in their family that has ungodly breathing issues, but it's only in their AC season. Yeah.
So we've got to replace the system now. What's going to be the best way to go about what type of system I need?
So it really comes down to the contractor and the professional you hire. Most times they're going to look at your house, because it's called an envelope basically for a load calculation. They're going to look at, are your windows up to standards where it's not, because if your windows are leaky, and you're going to have a lot of issues already. So that's one area. So they're going to start looking at some things in your house and determine, is the size that's already there the proper one, or do you need, because if you're having a lot of rooms that are like opposite, so if you need it cool, they're staying warm, it's because your system may be undersized. So they're going to look at that, and they're going to determine like the proper size for it.
And now by size, are you referring to like the tons or SEER?
The tonnage.
The tonnage,
The tonnage,
okay.
yeah.
Okay.
The tonnage is just a mass airflow. I mean, that's
Yes.
how much air is being moved through your house.
Yep.
Bigger house, bigger tonnage.
Yeah, and a lot of people don't realize. So you made like the old ranch I had like 11 or 12 foot ceilings on it, and so I had like a 3-ton air conditioner on it. But really, because of the high ceilings, I probably could have done a 3.5. Really, because in summertime I had a lot of issues with humidity being stuck at the top.
Yeah, and one thing on the size, because in the United States, everybody thinks that bigger is better. I want the biggest horsepower. I want the biggest whatever.
Bigger tires.
Yeah, biggest lift kit. Redneck it up. But anyway, I sidetracked myself on that.
Hey, it's all right. I
That size has to be proper.
I resemble that remark.
So I've actually got one that would go for both of you guys. One, Andy is representing manufacturing, and Vince as actually being on the technician side of things. So what should we expect for you as a manufacturer to look for in a professional, as someone that is installing your equipment?
Yeah, so one, as over the years when I was in more of the sales roles and stuff like that, I always wanted to work with people that, one, wanted to do a great job for the homeowner. I think that's the best part to start with, is you want somebody that wants to do good. You want somebody that also has a professional mindset, because a lot of times you're dealing with mom and pops here that maybe were a technician for another company, saw a paycheck. So a lot of times they need a lot of help and stuff like this, and that's great. I love helping them and everything like that. But you want to be able to make sure that they're not just going to be here today and gone tomorrow. You want a company that, because if they're installing your equipment and they're here today and gone tomorrow, well, now you get a headache when they're gone, because you got homeowners going, well, this is who I used to use. You recommended him, or this was somebody under your manufacturer. Now, who are you, and so it kind of looks bad. So you want to work with people that are going to be here for the long haul, that want to be in this business and take care of you.
Well, that would be Vince right here. So on that one, what do you think that homeowners should look for in a professional?
Well, I mean, number one above all is checking reviews out online. that's the easiest place to find it. But for us and what we do, when our technicians walk into that house for the appropriate job that they're licensed for, they're going to go through that checklist and they're going to check everything out on that equipment. Or check the entire house, depending on if it's electrical or if it's plumbing. They're going to check every fixture in there, but they're going to go through this checklist and they're going to say, okay, this is good, this is fair, or this is bad. And once they go through that list, and of course, if it's good, you're going to be happy, and we're going to tell you it's good. If it's not good, then we're going to say, hey, this part is questionable, or this part needs to be fixed right now. So every job we go to is really a customized deal. There is no cookie cutter deal. You got to look through there and give a true evaluation. And then there's no selling to it. It's here it is. What do you want to address? Now, if we tell you to address it and you don't do it, don't call me complaining that, so, but, and that does happen from time to time, but when we implemented this process, that eliminated the majority of it, because then, if a homeowner decides, nope, I'm not doing it, and then that part breaks in a month, and it's 98 degrees, they're like, I probably should have listened to what your recommendation was. And that's that way with every trade. So we found that our customer satisfaction ratings skyrocketed when we implemented that system. And because I don't care if you've been doing the job or you've been licensed for 1 year or you've been doing it for 40 years, because I hear all this stuff from guys that we bring in and talk to, you'll forget. If you don't have a list to work off of, you are not going to remember to check every item on there, and you're not going to remember, oh yeah, that part wasn't good, and so if you don't follow that list, it's not going to be good, and follow that process. So, that we've really, really gotten to be process-driven company-wide, and that's, what really fueled the unbelievable growth that we've been through, and we've added all these trades, and that people just keep asking us to do more. I believe I'm going to stop at where we're at now in terms of adding additional trades, but my wife's about ready to kill me for doing it, but it's all working, and people love it, so we'll continue on.
I think you said something really well there is, when you go through with that checklist and you show homeowners, I think the biggest thing that really looks bad on our industry is the people that don't do that, because here they go in, they fix it, you pay them $1,000 or whatever it may be, and then a week later it's broken. Yeah, it's a whole nother part, but to the homeowner, that's not a different part. You were here, you fixed it, it's broke now.
And I've said that numerous times. There is absolutely nothing worse than having an expert out and looking at your property to then have them come back.
Oh, 100%.
Within a week or two.
All right. I believe we've answered most of the questions that we were here to discuss today. So we'll probably it's getting about that time to wrap it up. So, but with that, of course, normally I would plug who Andy works for, but they asked for us not to. So I'll give a shameless plug to AbsoluteServices.net, and if you have any heating and air, plumbing, electrical, or garage doors issues, give us a call, and we will take care of all of that. We mentioned the memberships earlier. That's a really big deal that we're pushing now, and the people that we're doing it for really, really like it. We typically going to come out to your house 5 times a year and check out everything in your house. So, and at that point, same what we just spoke about earlier. It's all process driven. We're going to go through a checklist. We're going to give you the condition. You decide what you want to do, and hopefully it all works out well for both of us.
Yeah, again, thanks Andy for coming in here today, sharing your experience and your knowledge with us regarding all heating, cooling, HVAC. It's definitely really appreciate you coming in.
I appreciate you guys having me. This has been fun.
All right. Well, that's all for today, and thank you for listening, and we'll see you next week.